Okay, we're ready to go. Hello, this is Hector Combo. Today is February the 24th, and I am bringing you the news behind the headlines, the alternative to the mainstream propaganda. And I don't know how else to say it because there is a vein of truth behind the whole fear pandemic that is happening in a global scheme. And we're talking about the coronavirus because it's an important thing and it's a crucial thing to understand that there is a much bigger context and it's not just a couple of people in China eating bats and somehow everyone's infected. So let's look at this article from 2015 that talks about the coronavirus and how it triggered a debate based on a controversy. And we're going to go through this article. So let's get to it. Lab-made coronavirus triggers debate. Ralph Baric, an infectious disease researcher at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, last week, November 9th, published a study on his team's effort to engineer a virus with the surface protein of the SHC014 coronavirus found in horseshoe bats in China, and the backbone of one of that causes human-like severe acute respiratory syndromes in mice. The hybrid virus could infect human airway cells and cause disease in mice, according to the team's results, which were published in Nature Medicine. The result demonstrated the ability of the SHC014 surface protein to bind and infect human cells, validating concerns that this virus or other coronavirus found in bat species may be capable of making the leap to people without first evolving in an immediate host. In October 2013, the U.S. government put a stop to all federal funding for gain-of-function studies. Gain of functions, the best way for a layman to understand that is genetically engineering viruses or modifying their genetic structure, their DNA for something, a different function or a different purpose that they're trying to study. And here on this article in October, this article is from 2015, so it's from 5 years ago, and it's talking about the research that some of these folks were doing in Chapel Hill, the University of North Carolina. They were researching and genetically engineering this particular strain. And so it talks about the controversy behind it and how it has stirred a lot of debate behind it. And these studies, so says the article, these studies, however, also entail biosafety and biosecurity risks. So let's underline that. These studies, however, also entail biosafety and biosecurity risks. So while they were developing and engineering these, what would you call them? Monstrosities will be a really hard rhetorical word to use, but think about it. There was a debate about it. They kept on doing it, and there was a moratorium. Let's continue on the article because I'm getting very charged on this. Barrick's study on the SH014 chimeric coronavirus began before the moratorium was announced, and the National Institute of Health allowed it to proceed during a review process, which eventually led to the conclusion that the work did not fall under the new restrictions. So they put a moratorium because people were concerned, and duly they thought that putting a pause on this type of research will be the best thing to do. But because this was an ongoing research before, it did not get affected by that. So this is a smoking gun or a very good article to look into the bigger picture. The bigger picture that we were told as the headlines broke is that there is a pandemic breaking and it's unstoppable. And some people on Twitter or in social media in general, they thought because, the Chinese are using, they're eating these weird things that we Americans wouldn't eat. So it creates this irrational feeling that somehow it's an uncontrolled natural development. But in fact, if you look at this article, it's actually a genetically engineered coronavirus with other things. And that's just the beginning. And again, this particular video is not going to go in depth with all the details. It's only a curating method. I'm curating all the content behind the headline so that you can look into it yourself and research more. So that is one thing that is really sticks out to me. The only impact of this work is the creation in a lab of a new non-natural risk. The only impact of this work is the creation in a lab of a new non-natural risk, which says it all. And it's Richard Ebright, a molecular biologist and biodefense expert at Rutgers University, told Nature. But Baric and others argue the study's importance. The results move this virus from a candidate emerging pathogen to a clear and present danger. And now fast forward to the 2020, the clear and present danger where we don't know where this is going to go. And it has created so much fear in people because of the videos that have been exposed or released. And China is behind a great firewall, a great internet firewall that the information that comes out from them is very hard to really analyze because they're controlled by an authoritarian state. The main point here that I find very hard to, think very just complex. It's what is more dangerous? This particular bioweapon, which if we look into authoritative sources, Shapiro, he made an interview with a very authoritative source. His name is author of the U.S. Biowarfare Act, Professor Francis Boyle, uncovers separate studies which he claims confirms the smoking gun evidence to the Wuhan coronavirus known as COVID-19 was in fact weaponized. So if you go through this interview, which I recommend you do, it's 30 minutes, and I think Shapiro did a great job. He let the guest explain exactly what it is and what his opinion on this matter is. And on these sources, you can find many different dots which you interconnect. But the context of it is that major governments, Australian governments, Chinese government, American government, German government, all these major governments have been involved in studying, researching, and developing bioweapons. So they're not going to tell you that they made a mistake or they did something wrong. They're just going to react however they can, and they try to clamp down controls. That's the major thing. Everybody's losing it over this coronavirus thing. In general, there's a fear. The promulgation of fear keeps this whole system alive. So that's the crux of this, putting fear into our heart so that we can accept the agenda. And again, if you follow this YouTube channel, podcast, you know that I have more skepticism or suspicion in government and their reaction than the natural development of risk or phenomena that happen naturally. But this was not a naturally occurring event. Something was created in a lab. It broke out by accident. And some of the things that happened right after the story broke out, were kind of not correct. So I waited a little bit, like about 2 weeks, until I made this, video, because once everybody rushes towards the truth, quote unquote, and to try to break it and, digest all the headlines, there's so much fictitious information. It doesn't lead anywhere, but it just stirs up the heart. So we were told that, the virus originated in Wuhan seafood market. And this article again goes through the debunking that and talks about a Chinese scientist who basically debunked that. It completely made it clear that it was something else and it was not a natural thing. And again, referring this thing, the only impact of this work is the creation in the lab of a new non-natural risk. They created a non-natural risk. It broke out of their lab. And now we are here in 2020. And the Chinese did not steal this virus. No, they cooperated with one another. They sold the Americans sold this research to the Chinese. The Chinese took it upon themselves to further it and quote unquote turbocharge. And again, to reference this authoritative source right here, this interview is a must see, and I am not going to take away from it. You need to look at this video. That's the important part here. The interview here will tell you everything you need to know, the details, and that's what I'm putting forward here because I want to pass on this information. But I think what's important to ask is the question is who profits? Who profits? Always ask yourself, follow the money, who profits? So now Johnson & Johnson advised coronavirus simulation and now stands to gain financially with new vaccine. So surprise, surprise, they have a vaccine, they're developing it. And, again, on this wonderful article by Spiro, and again, he talks in this video how these individuals are more interested in developing a vaccine that is ready to go to the market, but is not necessarily their priority to make it safe or effective. So these people have already simulated this type of event, and they're looking already to market a new vaccine. Problem, reaction, solution. That's how this thing works. Follow the pattern, who profits, right? So again, so it just so happens millions of Chinese firms face collapse if the banks don't act. So coinciding with a global pandemic of economic recession that we are told that the government and authority figures have it all figured out, it's not it's not so straightforward. Now people are more reluctant to trust the banks and the authority figures, but whether it's a coincidence, whether it's a happy event that's just so happens to coincide with these agendas, now, we are told that the markets are going to crash because, global travel and global trade will be affected and China's bottom line is being affected. And here you could see most small and medium-sized firms say they will run out of cash in months. They're fighting for survival, and that will affect us. And, there are some people in the American media who see this as an opportunity for the manufacturing base in the United States to grow and to, use this opportunity, this critical opportunity to, increase our economy. And I mean, come on, that's just another video, another story. But let's look at these 7 agendas that follow the coronavirus outbreak. It just so happens that these people are critical opportunists and they don't really care whether their vaccines are effective. And who are we talking as they? This corporate establishment who are fudging things or fixing things or rigging things and creating non-natural risk and then selling off that research to other countries. All major governments are involved in bioweapon research because they see themselves as trying to proactively create these weapons so that they can have one step above the other guy, the other enemy. So again, the history of Operation Paperclip, where the United States brought in all these Nazi scientists, and this is not just rhetoric. There were actual Nazi scientists who brought into different departments of the United States government. NASA would be the biggest one example, but it doesn't stop there. So this research, this vein of trying to create these monstrosities to destroy your enemy is nothing new. The problem is things get out of hand. That's the big issue here. So here are some of the 7 opportunities for authoritarian governments to further their control and centralize power in the hands of the few. So let's just look at the headlines here. And again, I implore you to look into these sources. They will be posted on this video. Again, I'm just doing you a service because you're going to get lost in all this internet media stuff and people are going to be telling you that the world is ending, but it's not so straightforward. The main capital that keeps the government alive is the fear. Fear, fear, fear. The propaganda that keeps all this whole shebang together is fear. So, centralized control of information, censorship, and narrative control. Disinformation and misinformation are wreaking havoc, so says the pharmaceutical companies. The pharmaceutical companies are being accused of introducing the virus so they can make money on drugs and vaccine and have been public faith in their product and have seen public faith in their products plummet. Okay, so here it quotes an article and it's telling you about the concern from the established experts who say, well, there's no public trust in our vaccines. We need to control the narrative because people are dying and all these crazy stuff is happening. So we need to control information. Okay, what happens when the government controls information? They don't tell us the full truth, and they won't because it is not in their benefit. If the government were to tell you the truth, they will have to admit that they themselves are involved in bioweapon research, stuff that the Nazis did. And in the Second World War II, Americans did that too. The Germans did that too. And the Germans went too far with it. So nobody wants to admit it. All right, what is the second thing that they have on board? What is just so happening to appear as a critical opportunity is the cashless agenda. Don't use cash. Don't use cash because it has germs and it infects and spreads it spreads the virus. So why would the government want to abolish cash? The government doesn't want cash because anonymous private transactions between peer-to-peer are something that they can't control, and they need to analyze it, account it, and budget everything. They need to fix and control everything. Now, the other thing that is very alarming is, again, the reaction from authoritarian regimes. We're not better than China. China is the model for where the world is going. The United States, a little bit behind, but we invented this whole shebang of worldwide imperialism, and they've exploited different countries. So please don't even try to comment that somehow the Chinese are bad and evil. Look, the only people that I truly believe is individuals with a free mind of their own and who follow their passion and compassion. I don't believe some amorphous vehicle of government that is here to protect me. And if you believe in that facade, I'm sorry for you. You're not going to get through this point. Okay, so the important one is martial law quarantines. Government love martial law scenarios because normal human rights are suspended. Authoritarian China has been lauded by many globalists, such as the late David Rockefeller, as a model for the New World Order. A New World Order literally just means a country and a several coterie of different client states controlling the world. It means different things for different people. All you need to know is that there's really sick, depraved people who want to control everything. And the Chinese are not the only ones. The Americans do it too. So this is a perfect opportunity for them to expand their authoritarian regimes. So here's the other one, mandatory vaccines. So remember, the vaccine debate is very critical, and most of the time, the authority figures are on the fence, and they try to control the narrative, and basically the trust is not given to them wholeheartedly anymore. So mandatory vaccination is definitely one of these critical opportunities that the government will use to further the scam of their control. Okay, so we're going to number 5. We're going through this because it needs to be a bullet point video going towards all the information that you need to look into, and open your minds, open your heart. Don't give in to fear, because that's what gives them the power. Bill Gates ID 2020, digital identification versus microchipping. Okay, here is the story. That the ID 2020 Alliance, as it is being called, is a digital identity program that aims to leverage immunization as a means of inserting tiny microchips into people's body in collaboration with Global Alliance for Vaccines and Immunization, also known as Gavi. The government of Bangladesh and various others, partners in government, academia, and humanitarian relief want all humans to be vaccinated. That's the main thing. They want all humans vaccinated because they have genetic engineering behind those vaccinations. They're trying to modify our biological mind. They're trying to modify us through vaccines. They're trying to control us at a biological level, and they're trying really hard. What is this other agenda item that they have? Agenda 2030. Wuhan slated to be one of the China's smart cities. So Wuhan, future city located in eastern East Lake High Tech Development Zone, is one of the 4 concentrated talent basis for major state-owned enterprise and only future sciences and technology town approved by the State Council for Central and Western regions. So, I mean, this might seem like off-putting or like totally irrelevant, but they're trying to make people fear so much that they run towards these smart cities, these tightly controlled cities that are run by algorithms that exploit people and try to control their every move and give them a social credit. So if all the people are getting infected outside of the smart cities, where do you think they're going to rush? They're going to rush towards the controlled authoritarian bubble. That's what they will do because they're fear. Fear keeps this whole system alive. Okay, is the coronavirus epidemic a race-based bioweapon? So that's an interesting point to put forth. I don't want to put too much stress on that because you need to do a lot more research to get committed to something like that. I'm just putting forward some of these critical opportunities that, again, might be more harmful than the actual coronavirus. I fear an authoritarian regime, a government that will use this to limit my freedom and to take away information that could be beneficial to me to understand what is going on, and basically tell me that they're here to save me. That's the major thing. Okay, so if you go into this interview, and he appeared on the Alex Jones show, I personally don't want you to go to there because Alex just interrupts his guests all the time. I would really recommend that, you look into Spiro's interview because he actually lets his guests talk. So gain of function. Here, we're going to look into the transcripts of Francis Boyle, a very authoritative source that talks about, how he believes and he claims with sources that this was a genetically engineered bioweapon that got out of hand. So the critical part here where it says, it may provide a gain of function. So he says, Francis Boyle, gain of function to the 2019 nCoV for efficient spreading in the human population compared to other beta current coronaviruses. Let me repeat that. It may provide a gain of function to the 2019 nCoV for efficient spreading in the human population compared to other coronaviruses. So they've been trying to tinker this virus so that it could be spreadable to humans. And again, to reference this article, they're saying the only and this article is from 2015. It's not from yesterday. The only impact of this work is the creation in the lab of a new non-natural risk. That's the big story here, where the World Health Organization and other major government entities are involved in this, but because they're guilty of profiting or selling this research to the Chinese, they're not going to admit a goddamn thing about it. They're just going to tell us that they're here to protect us and they got it all covered. And it just so happens that Johnson & Johnson is ready to go with, a coronavirus vaccine. Oh, I'm so lucky. I'm so lucky that Johnson & Johnson, who are being totally fucking sued because of their products causing cancer in kids. Look it up. Talcum powder from Johnson & Johnson causing cancer in children. Oh, well, they're here to help us. Of course, they care about us. Yeah. I feel very, very, very safe. Okay. How freaked out you should be by the possibility that there was asbestos in baby powder. So, they're currently being sued, and there's a huge controversy behind that, and there's another story. I'm just very angry about this situation in the general sense that everything that we hear from the mainstream media is pumping fear, and their ultimate goal, again, to outline it's centralization of power, controlling the narrative, and tracking your every move, and making you fear so much that you clamor towards more banker manipulation of the economy, more free money for the rich elite, while we stay outside of these smart cities that they're creating. And this is not something that is just going to stop here. They're going to use this as a platform to continue centralizing power. Again, I'm going to compose myself and just tell you straightforward, look, the major problem here is more than just a coronavirus. The major problem here is people in authority abusing and exploiting their knowledge so that they can advance their self-interest and monopolize power. They don't really care about the effectiveness of their vaccine. They're just trying to pump it out as soon as they can, and that's the main issue.
Johnson & Johnson was asked specifically about a coronavirus vaccine.
And I think before we agree that we have a finite resource, we need to really challenge ourselves on the vaccine production. We've seen historically that we can actually produce an Ebola vaccine in a year. It requires flexibility on the regulatory side. It requires commitment from companies. But I do think that before we say that a vaccine is not available, we should not slow down on that. We should pursue that. But I think similarly, we need to explore how can we accelerate production of antivirals. We've seen it happen before in the HIV crisis. It's possible, but decisions need to be made, and we need to bring the right people together to do that.
Okay. For the moment, before we are able to accelerate production of the antiviral, do you have any initial reaction, since you are potentially one of the companies that could be part of this deliberation?
What we've seen work very well in the HIV field is, in fact, procurement through the Global Fund. So having a centralized mechanism, so financially able to procure on behalf of affected countries, is very critical. I think the second thing is it's going to be very important that for the business sector, for manufacturers of antivirals, that we have clarity around what the need is and where the need is and who are making the decisions.
As you just heard, when asked, the Johnson & Johnson representative talked about the need for regulatory flexibility for an accelerated vaccine, financing, and business. Not once did he mention safety and or effectiveness. And we see today in the news, Johnson & Johnson are currently working on a new vaccine that they are, quote, pretty confident can be quickly developed. For more, be sure to tune into my recent report covering Event 201 and all of the connections and coincidences.
Coincidences, of course. So I'll leave you this one more time. Please look into these sources. It's important, and don't let yourself be fooled. It's important for us not to be led astray by fear. To be beguiled by fear is essentially to go run off a cliff, because we lose control and we become uncertain and let all these authority figures comfort us. And so, the cycle repeats. The centralization of power is the objective, and I'm not going to go along with it. So I implore, again, look into these things. This is your friend Hector Combo with this very intense report, and I hope that you didn't misunderstand what I said. I'm not really angry about this situation. It makes me upset that some people are willing to sell out humanity so that they can make a lot of money. So once again, your friend Hector Combo. Until then.